Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler, the president and founder of the Statler Financial Services. We've got a great show for you lined up for you today, talking about your financial checkup here. Now, we all probably know what it means to be physically healthy, right? Like you eat right, you exercise, drink water, and you get rest. But what does it mean to be financially healthy? Well, a personal capital poll from this year says that Americans think that they need to earn about $122,000 to feel financially healthy, but that's double the national average for earnings. Philip, I have a question for you. Should we be focused solely on earnings when we're thinking about our financial health for retirement, or are there other factors that we should be thinking about here?
Well, Danielle, I really don't focus a lot on earnings. I focus more on what are we going to need to spend when we get ready to retire, because that's the whole deal, right? If I don't have money to spend in retirement, then retirement's not going to be much of an adventure. And so we look at that in terms of really and truly, what's our financial health look like? Am I going to have enough there to be able to create the income stream I'm going to need when I look at all my different sources of revenue, like Social Security or pensions, that type of thing? Am I going to have enough to really keep my standard of living the same as while I was working?
A lot of things to consider here when we're talking about your financial checkup, Philip. As I mentioned earlier, we're so used to going to the doctor, right? Like we're so used to hearing the doctor say, hey, like it's time to eat right. It's time to go work out and, drink more water. But when it comes to checking our finances, a lot of people really worry that they're falling behind when they're preparing for retirement. How do you go about helping retirees learn if they're on track or not? How are you kind of like that financial coach for us?
Well, and that's a good point. Actually, Danielle, and we do consider ourselves kind of that retirement coach. I think it all starts with having a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, then there's really no way of knowing if you're on track to have that retirement that you really dreamed of. And so it starts there, having that written retirement income plan in place, that kind of a map to follow to make sure that you are on track. And then it's a matter of checking in. Periodically, we like to meet with our clients about once a year at a minimum to make sure that they're on track to hit the goals that they've put out for themselves, to make sure that they can retire when they want to retire and have the income they're going to need.
Philip, when it comes to getting with our financial advisor, it can be intimidating sometimes. We may hear things that we're not ready to hear, but it's kind of also like going to the doctor. It's something that we kind of put off, we avoid. We were talking earlier about how it's important to go get that, physical checkup, because your doctor's going to constantly remind you, be that reminder for you to say, hey, this is what your blood tests say. This is what everything in your physical body is showing. But when it comes to retirement planning, why do so many people put it off? Is it something that we're afraid to hear?
Well, I think it could be. It's like one of those things that was kind of like going to the doctor, right? Nobody wants to go to the doctor until it gets to the point that they can't bear it anymore, right? That's you go to the dentist. Nobody wants to go to the dentist, but you go because, well, you need to go. And a lot of times people don't go until what? It hurts.
Yes.
And so, and that happens when it comes to financial planning as well. Sometimes people don't actually say sometimes, a lot of times people don't come to see us until they're ready to retire. Mm-hmm. That's when they start thinking about putting together a plan to make sure that they can retire. It's not too late at that point, Danielle, but it would be easier for folks if they started, 5 or 10 years before they really wanted to retire.
Right.
To make sure that they have all of their ducks in a row and that they're ready for that next step in the process. And so I think that that's really the reason people don't want to is that the fear that I don't have enough, the
Right.
fear that I'm not on track and that Philip's going to tell me I can't retire. And so, they don't want to hear that, right? They're focused on retirement. And I know because when I sit down with somebody that I honestly look at their situation and say, you know what? That person should not retire. Health insurance is a big deal. They're 62.
Right.
They don't need to retire. And so when I have to deliver that message, they're not happy. They don't like that because they're focused on, hey, I can draw Social Security. I want to retire now. And so when you have to be the bearer of bad news and say, well, you know what? If you do, then it's not going to be a fun transition. And so I think those are the reasons people don't want to come see us to get that financial checkup.
Right. And you mentioned it earlier, that keyword fear. It is something that we're all avoiding. The number one fear in retirees, Philip, is that we are afraid to run out of money. You mentioned it, you talked about it, and it's important that we acknowledge that, but it's also important that we don't avoid it, because the more that we keep overlooking and say, I'm going to put this off, then really you're putting yourself in a situation to where it could end up worse for you. If you come in and speak with Philip and his team, they can guide you. But I know we're right now just talking about pre-retirees, but let's talk about even the people that are already retired. Do you recommend that if you're already retired, should you still think about getting a financial checkup?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's a wrong time to get that financial checkup. And I think that, periodically you truly need to run your financial situation through a second set of eyes to make sure that you are doing what's best for you and that you're on track with your plan. And so I think that just because you're retired, actually, it may be even more important that once you're retired to have that financial checkup to make sure that you're on track for that retirement and that your money's going to last as long as you need it to, Danielle, because like you said, the fear of running out of money is huge. We don't want anybody to be in that situation. We want to be able to show them mathematically that, hey, look, if you do this, if you follow this plan, then you're not going to run out of money. And so that's really the key part of the whole financial checkup is making sure that people understand that by following this roadmap, that the chances of them running out of money diminishes drastically. And so that's why I think it's important that folks get a financial checkup.
That's right. And Philip, you and your team have been doing this for years. And so if you aren't sure how financially healthy you are, or you don't know if your retirement plan will work for your own personal circumstances, Philip, I know you and your team have a process that you walk many retirees through. If you can go into what that is and what does that look like?
Absolutely, Danielle, because that's one of the reasons that I developed the core retirement design. There's so many things that when you start thinking about retirement that folks don't really realize. The first part that people really need to understand when it comes to their retirement is risk. How much risk do they have in their current portfolio? And then how much risk should they have in their portfolio based on how close they are to retirement? Based on their circumstances, it is vitally important that those two numbers match up. And a lot of times when I meet with folks, that's what I find. They don't really and truly match up. And so we want to make sure that the risk you have is the right amount of risk for you and your spouse. That's the first part of our core retirement design. The second part is one of those ugly words, Danielle, it's called taxes.
Oh, gosh.
We want to make sure folks are paying the least amount of taxes through their retirement, not just today, through their retirement, through their beneficiary's lifetime as well. We want to reduce taxes as much as possible. And lastly, we want to make sure that people have that roadmap. I think you said earlier, 70% of the folks out there do not have a written retirement game plan. They have no idea where their income's going to come from. I call it the junk drawer approach, right? They have a lot of things. They're just not sure where the money's going to come from. It's going to come from one of them or two of them or three of them, but there's no written plan in place to say, this is when you're going to get the money. This is how long it's going to last. This is when we're going to change buckets. That's, again, why I developed the core retirement design. It's easy to start the process. It's a 30-minute phone call where you can ask me whatever questions you may have, and I'm going to ask you questions to see if you're on track for that retirement you always dreamed of. You can give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Again, it's 30 minutes, you and I on the phone, making sure that we understand your goals and make sure you're on the right track to get to where you want to be. That number again, 863-285-3815. Folks, give us a call. It's painless. There's no obligation. Again, 863-285-3815.
As we mentioned, nearly 70% of Americans are missing a written financial plan, and people without a plan tend to feel less confident about their future. If you have any questions about retirement, any hesitation, as Philip mentioned, do not hesitate to call him and his team at 863-285-3815. Again, that number is 863-285-3815. As we mentioned earlier, we all know what an annual physical checkup looks like, but what does it look like to get a financial checkup? What does that look like? We're going to answer that question coming up next. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler, the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We've got a great show for you lined up. We've been talking about the financial checkup. Now, we all know what to expect with our annual physical, the questions that they'll ask, and we know the basic procedures, right? But we don't always understand how a financial checkup works. We're talking about that today here with Philip Statler. Philip, what could a financial checkup look like?
Well, I think, Danielle, when we think of a financial checkup, we think of our investments, right? We think of looking at our portfolios, looking at our whole financial situation and say, okay, am I okay? Am I going to make it? For us, when we look at a financial checkup, we want to dig deep, right? Just like when I did one not too, earlier this year, I did my checkup, right? And the doctor, he went deep. I gave a whole bunch of blood and they analyzed it. And, then after that, they sent me to this doctor and that doctor and for some specific things they were looking at. And so a financial checkup is kind of the same. Mm-hmm. We need to dig deep into the circumstances that we are. And that starts with risk. How much risk do we have in our portfolio on a scale of 1 to 100? and what should that risk be, and how far are we off one way or the other? Because Danielle, what I see a lot of times is that when I meet with folks, there's probably about 60% of the folks that have too much risk in their portfolio. There's another 25 to 30% that they don't have enough risk in their portfolio. And folks, listen, both of those situations can hamper your retirement scenario. And there's about 10% of the folks that are, hey, they've got it just right. And so we want to start there to make sure that we are on the right track when it comes to risk. I mean, I think the other thing we need to look at when we do a financial checkup is, are we on track with the amount of money we're taking out now? And are we still following our plan as far as our income plan? Do we match up? Do the numbers look good? How long? The other thing we look at in a financial checkup, which may not make sense, is how's your health, right? Because health really does have a big influence on our finances. And so we want to know how our clients are doing from a health perspective. Are they dealing with anything that's new that we need to be aware of so that we can alter our plans maybe? Those are type of things that we look at when we do our financial checkups.
Philip, I liked how you broke that down, the 3 different steps. You talked about risk, you talked about taking money out, and then that last one, health. I think that's super important. You mentioned, making sure people are possibly emotionally and physically healthy, because we all know when we need to visit our doctor annually, it's so easy. We go yearly, it's on the calendar. But when it comes to our financial, how often should we get a financial checkup?
It depends a lot of times on the client, the individual themselves, right? We have some that we meet with twice a year. We have some that we meet with once a year. And we have some, just like the doctor, we have to drag them in that, they don't, hey, we'll get out a couple of years before we manage to lasso them to come in for their financial checkup. And so, I would say at least annually, you need to look at your finances to make sure that everything looks good, that everything is the way it should be based on the current economic conditions, the markets, your age, how long till retirement, life expectancy. All those things play a big role, Danielle, in our whole financial checkup situation.
Philip, I agree. I think there's a lot to consider, especially in retirement, because, it's so easy to say, we know what kind of doctors to see when treating certain ailments or conditions. It's easy to kind of go speak to a specific doctor, but what should we look for when choosing a financial professional to work with? It might be a little different, but I'm interested to hear what we should look for when choosing a financial professional to work with us when it comes to getting that financial checkup.
That's a good question, Danielle, because, when you go to the doctor, doctors have specialties, right?
Right.
If you need a urologist, they send you to a urologist. If you're having heart issues, they send you to a cardiologist. In the financial world, we don't have that. And there's designations, but a lot of those don't really mean a whole lot, to be honest with you. And so when we look at that, one of the things you want to look at is you want somebody that has some independence. They don't have to be, beholden to the company store. They can focus on what needs to be done for the client and specifically to that end. The other thing is you want somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to you, that they have to do by law what's in your best interest. Now, folks, a lot of people will tell you, well, we're doing what's in your best interest, but do they have the legal responsibility to do it? It does make a difference. And so I think that those 2 areas, and then the third area I would look at is somebody that really focuses on retirement planning and income planning, because it's different than accumulating, right? So there's kind of 2 phases: accumulation and then distribution, getting your money out. And so, and they take 2 different philosophies, 2 different processes. And so you want somebody that is their main focus, is retirement planning, helping you put together that retirement plan to make sure it's going to last as long as you do. Again, Danielle, that's why I created the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. It's simple to get started. It's you and I on the phone for 30 minutes. I'll answer your questions. I'll make sure that I get information from you to see if you're doing what you need to do to have that retirement you always dreamed of. It's a phone call away. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to get your core retirement analysis.
If you have any questions about retirement, as Philip mentioned, don't hesitate to call. That number again is 863-285-3815, 863-285-3815. Philip, earlier in the show when we were talking about looking at risk, right? One of those things about risk is like those things are out of our control. And so it made me think about how sometimes outside factors also have an effect on your physical health, even if it seems like you're doing all the right things to take care of yourself, right? That doctor sometimes brings you some news that's unfortunate. And so when you're looking at your financial health and you're looking at your finances, the first question is, can that happen with your money? Is there certain things out of our control? So what do you do about those things that are out of our control?
Well, obviously there are things outside of our control, right? The markets. We don't control what the markets do. The economy. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are out of our control. And so we have to have a plan in place that allots for that takes those things into consideration when we look at where we are. And I think that that's important because we don't know, right? We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed anything. And so all we can do is make sure that we've got the best plan possible in place. And it talks about diversification. We need to diversify several different ways, but the first way we need to diversify is between what is at risk and what is principal secure. So, your principal is not at risk. That's the first step that we need to walk through.
Really good thing to keep in mind, diversification. As you mentioned, it sounds like making sure we have access to them. When we're talking about getting a financial checkup, going back to this doctor analogy, it's the best way we can understand it because we often seek second opinions when it comes to our physical health. When the doctor brings you news, if you don't want to receive it, or if you're like, you know what, I'm going to go get a second opinion. Could that be the same significance when it comes to us getting a financial health? Should we get a second opinion?
I think so, especially if things don't seem to match up with your philosophy or your thinking. Makes sense to get a second opinion, especially if you have everything in the risk bucket. I think it is vitally important because if we have another 2000 or another 2008, when you are retired or you're 5 years out from retirement, it can change the whole perspective of outliving your money. And so we want to make sure that we get those second opinions when we're making some changes like that.
Philip, we keep talking about how 70% of Americans are missing a written financial plan. And in that case, it sounds like without a plan, there are more people to feel less confident. You were mentioning earlier, too, that you have this core retirement design, but we want to continue to make it plain for everyone. Can you walk us through what happens when someone comes in your office for a financial checkup on their retirement?
Absolutely, Danielle. So we start off, and like I said, we developed a core retirement design a couple years ago to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. It focuses on three key areas that are very, very important when it comes to retirement. The first area is risk. How much risk do we have in our portfolio? How much risk should we have in our portfolio? That's the number one thing. On a scale of 1 to 100, how much risk do you have? And then how much risk should you have? That's the first thing we look at. The second thing we look at is taxes. Folks, taxes are going to go up in a couple years no matter what happens. And we need to be ready for that. And that starts the process of the second thing in our core retirement design is making sure that we get taxes under control as best we can. And lastly, we need to have a written retirement income plan. Like Danielle said, 70% of the folks out there don't have a written plan. You need to have a roadmap to follow, and that comes in the form of a written retirement income plan. That's our core retirement design. Give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis. That's 863-285-3815.
Take advantage of this special offer from Philip to make sure that you won't run out of money. Now, you may even boost your returns over time, but get started today. Again, give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. If you end up having to be rushed to the emergency room, what will be the impact that will be on your retirement plan? We'll explore that next. We'll be right back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is more than just convenient, they're knowledgeable and experienced. To set up a meeting with Philip Statler and his team to talk about your retirement plan, all of it, call 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, one stop for a wealth of retirement solutions. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler, the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We're continuing talking about what it means to get a financial checkup. Well, according to Fidelity, the average couple can expect to spend an estimated $315,000. That's after tax on out-of-pocket healthcare expenses in retirement. Now, that's not including long-term care. You just can't afford to overlook healthcare costs when you're planning for retirement. So, Philip, as we're continuing the conversation about getting a financial checkup, as we're going into healthcare, it's one of these key areas that many retirees like to overlook. How do you help your clients plan for healthcare costs while not depleting their entire retirement savings?
Well, Danielle, that's a good question. And let's break this down just a little bit, because I think Fidelity likes to, catch us and excite us that that it's such a big bill, right? To bring fear into healthcare.
Right.
Now, I'm not discounting the $315,000. That's for a couple, but I want you to understand what that takes into consideration. That takes into consideration your Medicare premiums, your Medicare supplement payments, and then your deductibles and that kind of stuff. So when you look at that for a couple and you take that over their lifetime from 65 until their end of life, I think Fidelity uses to age 95. And so that's a long time in there. And you got a lot of inflated dollars in there over time. Now, that's not to say that healthcare is not expensive in retirement. It is. It becomes part of our budget process. When we develop an income plan, we're really developing a spending plan. What do we need to be able to spend and live in retirement the way we want to? And so that's where we take it into consideration, is that area of planning. And it's important, but I think that this report that they put out is more fear-based than a lot of than it needs to be from that standpoint.
Philip, I appreciate the transparency because, as you mentioned earlier, healthcare is another piece to that overall retirement plan. And even mention it too, that you and your team make sure that you budget it, you put it in that spending plan, which is good to know because so many retirees are probably just worried about that biggest expense of taxes. But healthcare seems to be another expense we have to worry about. What are some things that we can do now to prepare for some possible increasing healthcare costs later in life?
Well, I think that if we're not retired yet, we're still in that accumulation phase. I think it makes us want to stop and say, okay, maybe I need to put an extra 2 or 3% into my retirement plan, or I need to put 2 or 3% more into my accumulation bucket, so that I have a little extra to help offset that cost of what Medicare is going to look like. The other thing you can do is when we get closer to retirement is shop the Medicare supplements, shop to see what makes the most sense for you when it comes to that area of retirement planning, making sure that you get the right plan that's going to be the most effective for your health. I think that's a big deal, Danielle.
I appreciate that insight. And Philip, I know I mentioned earlier too from the report that the Fidelity report mentioned that the $315,000 number was after tax. That does not include long-term care. Earlier you mentioned it does seem alarming, a little bit over dramatic, but how is planning for healthcare costs different from planning for long-term care?
Well, healthcare costs is something you're going to have, right? I mean, if you're living, you're going to have medical expenses, right? No two ways about it. Long-term care, on the other hand, not everybody is going to end up in a long-term care facility or even need long-term care as a healthcare at all. And so it has people putting that in the back of their mind. They don't think about it. Nobody wants to think about what happens if I land in a nursing home. Right? That's the least of what anybody wants to think about. And I will say this when it comes to long-term care planning. Yes, there are several things you can do to plan for long-term care. You can go out and buy long-term care insurance. It's expensive, but it's out there. And I have clients that they have it, they've used it, they're glad they got it. I have other clients that use other methods for long-term care. There are annuities that will give you some long-term care benefits. There are life insurance policies that will give you a long-term care benefit. And so we have clients that is how they are taking care of their long-term care situation. And then there's folks that don't do much of anything. They don't have enough to have to worry about it. And when it comes to that situation, then we have a team of folks that we can rely on to help us through that planning process. And that is the key, is having the right team in place to help walk you through whatever scenario you're going through when it comes to long-term care. And a lot of this comes back down to budgeting, putting together that income plan. Circles us back around our core retirement design. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
Don't be afraid to take advantage of this offer. Again, that number is 863-285-3815, 863-285-3815. 3815. Philip and his team has been doing this for many years. And so speaking of many years, Philip, I'm sure you're aware that many people are living longer. It's a beautiful thing, right? A lot of people living longer, though, comes with more planning and getting everyone more prepared. And retirements today can last around 20 to 30 years. And I'm sure you're helping clients along the way dealing with that right now. So how has living longer changed our need for retirement planning?
Well, I think it makes us emphasize, and I have clients that they struggle with this, right? Because when I plan that you're going to live to 100. I believe that there's a good chance, if it's a husband and wife, that one of them's going to get there, or if not, they're going to get really close. And I want to make sure that in that process, they do not run out of money. And so that is my focus when I'm looking at long-term care, having enough money for retirement. It is important that we understand, what does longevity mean? For some folks, it may mean that I can't retire at 65. I need to get to 67. And I know there will be people that struggle with that because they hate their job or they don't like what they're doing and they just want to retire. But that's where having that plan in place really does help, Danielle, because you can figure out, can I truly afford to retire now? Since we are living so much longer, it's important that we don't retire too early.
Right. And I love that approach, Philip, that you mentioned, that you help retirees plan until they're 100, right? Setting them up for success, because we talked about it earlier in the show that the number one fear for many of us, and not retired or not, is running out of money. Living in that fear gets us really fearful. And so how can we, let's even break it down even more about how can we help ensure that we still have enough money if we live a long time in retirement?
Well, it comes back to planning, Danielle. We've got to have a plan in place. If we don't have that income plan, then how do we know that we're going to even get close? So, and I know that when we plan, there can be things that come up, right? There can be an expense or something that drains more out of our plan than we anticipated. But if we at least have a plan to start with that we can live with, that's the key. Because too many times I sit down with folks, and when they come see me, they thought they could live off of X. And now 2 years into retirement, they find out, oh, that's not working. I need 20% more than that. And that's when we get into trouble. And that's why I think when we put together that income plan, we have to use really, really conservative numbers and make sure that the budget truly reflects what you're going to spend.
That's right. We talked about continuing to ensure that you have an overall retirement plan. Healthcare and long-term care are a part of that. And as we continue to wrap up the show, really quick, Philip, can you talk about how can life insurance be used as part of an overall retirement plan?
So life insurance, depending upon what kinds you have, can be used as a cash flow vehicle. You can use it if you start early enough. You can accumulate cash in that life insurance vehicle that can then be used to supplement your income in retirement. The other place that we've seen it used, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that we can use it for long-term care planning. There are life insurance policies out there that will take that death benefit and use part of it to fund your long-term care if you need to. So there are various ways that life insurance can be a vital part of the overall retirement plan.
Want to continue to remind you that $315,000 is what Fidelity is reporting that an average couple spends on an estimated amount of healthcare expenses. Every year, more than 500,000 Americans file for bankruptcy due to medical bills. We've been talking continuously about making sure that you have an overall retirement plan to ensure that you have money as long as you live. Philip, as we close out right now, if you can just reiterate the significance of having an overall retirement plan, and if you don't have one, what can we do next?
Here's the deal. Having a plan makes you have so much higher success rate than if you don't have a plan. And that's why I developed the core retirement design, to give you that plan, to put it in place, to monitor it, to make sure that you have a successful retirement. Now, I know there's things that can come up. At least you got a plan to run on. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 for you and I to spend 30 minutes on the phone to make sure that you're heading in the right direction for the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that's 863-285-3815.
Don't hesitate to call Philip and his team at 863-285-3815. Again, that number is 863-285-3815. Now, have you ever wondered what retirement advice looks like from Ben Franklin, Mark Twain, or Yogi Berra? Have you? We'll find out next. We're going to dive into that more coming up after the break. We'll be right back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Now, there are some words of wisdom that stand the test of time. And now we're going to share some timeless advice for you to keep in mind for your retirement. Welcome back into the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler, the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. Now, Philip, I'm going to give you a quote, and I want you to talk about what that has to do with retirement planning. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so here we go. The first quote is from Ben Franklin. It says, "A penny saved is a penny earned." What does that have to do with your retirement?
Well, a penny saved, a penny earned, it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, right? If you're not spending money, then that gives you that penny that you can save, and that savings will go towards your retirement. And so I think that's important that we realize that, if we can put a plan in place early enough, that allows us to put money away. And that penny you saved, not only have you saved it for retirement, but now that penny can go to work for you to then provide for you a retirement income down the road.
Now, Philip, I know people may think like a penny, really? Like that's worth nothing. But I love the analogy that you explained. Any money that you saved is definitely something that's going to be earned later. So love that insight. Okay, let's do another one from Ben Franklin. He was a pretty smart guy after all. And he also said that wealth is not his that has it, but his that enjoys it. What does that mean to you?
So when I think of that quote, I think of the couple sitting across from me around the table, don't do anything. They're saving it for the kids. They're saving it for the grandkids, and nothing wrong with that. But if you're not enjoying your retirement, then what was it all for? Right? And so, statistically, and I think people don't realize this, statistically, the money you leave to the next generation is gone. And I don't remember how fast, but it's fast. That money is gone, and they're in the same predicament they were before they got their hands on that money. And I think we need to remember that. We need to enjoy. It's about experiences, doing the things we like to do. And I know I have friends, they don't like to travel. They want their homebodies. They want to be at home, but they're still doing the things they want to do. They're fishing, they're golfing, they're doing those type of things. And maybe travel's not your cup of tea, but you got to find something that you enjoy doing in retirement and enjoy it, because you didn't work all those years to sit at home and miserly keep all your money and not go enjoy it. So to me, it means wealth is being able to enjoy life to its fullest.
I love that. I love that reminder because, as you mentioned, we save up all this money, we work very hard, and then if you get to a space to not enjoy it, you said earlier, what is it all for? What did we do this for? And so I appreciate that reminder to just be confident in knowing that, hey, this is why it's important to have a plan, because then you can know how to enjoy it and ensure that you have enough as long as you live. So I appreciate that, Philip. Okay, let's go to our next one from Yogi Berra. He was one of the most famous baseball players of all time. He was also famous for his yogi-isms. And so one of the things that he mentioned was, a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. Okay, so that's his language. He says that a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. Philip, what is he talking about here?
So I think Yogi really understood inflation, right?
Yes, he definitely did.
So I think that tells us that, the dollar we have today isn't going to be worth what it is today next year, or even in the circumstance we are now, maybe next month, right? And so we need to take that in consideration when we're putting together our planning process, because inflation is that silent killer. It can take away our money, our purchasing power, without us even realizing it's happened, right? And so I think that saying really is all about inflation. And down the road, what we have is going to be worth less. And so we need to make sure that we are managing it properly. And that's where risk comes into play, Danielle. That's why we have to have at least some risk in our portfolio to help keep up with inflation.
Philip, and I want to take this time too to even go into the plan that you always talk about here on the show, your core retirement design. And speaking of inflation, it's that reminder. It's another reminder that we need to have a plan in place. And so healthcare, we talked about that earlier in the show. That's another plan that we need to have, because in case we have out-of-pocket healthcare costs that's happening to us. But you and your team have created a core retirement design to ensure that we can feel confident throughout retirement. If you can just take a few minutes to walk us through that process again to help us have a little bit more security with all of this unexpected circumstances happening.
Absolutely, Danielle. So our core retirement design, we developed about 2 years ago. And so in that process, we look at 3 key components of retirement. One is, how much risk do you have in your current portfolio? And is that the right amount of risk for you based on a key metric? And so that's number one. Number 2, taxes. We want our clients to pay the least amount of taxes possible, not just today, but throughout their retirement and even on to their beneficiaries. We want to make sure that their total tax payout is less than if they did nothing. And then thirdly, having that income plan in place, that written retirement income plan, so that you have a track to run on, a map to follow. That's what our retirement income plan is all about. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to have a 30-minute conversation to make sure you're on the right track to the retirement you always dreamed of.
Now, you don't have to plan for retirement alone. Philip and his team has been at this for years. So again, that number is 863-285-3815, 863-285-3815. Okay, Philip, I have one more quote from you from Mark Twain. I love this one. He says that October, this is one of the dangerous months to speculate stocks in. The others are July, January, September, April, November, May, March, June, December, August, and February. It almost sounds like he named all the months. So what is Mark Twain saying here?
I like the fact that he can name all the months and not in order, right? I mean, that says something right there, right?
Right.
So I think what Mark Twain is saying is that no matter when you're in the market, there's risk. right? There's always going to be risk in the stock market. And so that's one reason that we never want to have all of our eggs in one basket. And I sit down with folks sometimes. They say, well, yeah, but I got bonds over here. I got stocks over here. And I've got a couple other different asset classes here and there sprinkled in. Here's the one thing that I guess maybe we don't really understand as a society. All of those are a market. And markets will go up and markets will go down, whether it's the stock market or the bond market or the commodities market or the real estate market. They all go up and down. And so that is a key factor that I think we forget about. And so, that's one reason we want to make sure that we don't have 100% of our portfolio in a market producing environment, meaning we don't want 100% of our portfolio in something that's going to go up and down. We absolutely need to have something that protects our principal. That's the first diversification we need to look at. How much should we have protected? How much should we have at risk? That comes back to our core retirement design where we do that risk analysis. Second, the risk bucket. How do we diversify that? It needs to be broken down even more and diversified even more into different styles of portfolios. All of these things help to take away some of that risk component of the markets. Again, I think this is where we need to be. And the markets are the markets, right? We don't control them. We have to navigate through them.
That's right. And as we mentioned earlier, to wrap us all up, to remind you that nearly 70% of Americans are missing a written financial plan, and people without a plan tend to feel less confident about their future. You do not want to be one of those people. Philip and his team have an offer for you by giving you a 30-minute complimentary call. All you have to do is call the number 863-285-3815. Philip, I always appreciate your time here on the show. Your insights are always amazing, so thank you so much. If you have questions about retirement, don't hesitate to call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Radio Show. They're here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, if you missed that number, it's 863-285-3815. Again, 863-285-3815. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm Danielle J. Martin. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is more than just convenient, they're knowledgeable and experienced. To set up a meeting with Philip Statler and his team to talk about your retirement plan, all of it, call 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, one stop for a wealth of retirement solutions. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.